Welcome, dear darlings. Today's story is Transmigrated with my bestie, from tragic extras to the kingdom's new architects. Part 2. The chapel, the night's vulnerability. The blood moon hung low in the sky, a heavy, weeping eye of garnet. Maya walked toward the chapel, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs. As expected, a tall, iron-clad shadow stepped out from the archway. "It is late, Mina," Alistair said. His voice was tired, the strain of the last few days showing in the slight tension of his jaw. "I can't sleep, Alistair," Maya said, stepping closer than protocol allowed. She looked up at him, letting the crimson moonlight catch the fear in her eyes. "The sky looks like it's bleeding. They say the Saintess will find the evil tonight. What if? What if she looks at someone and just decides they're bad? What happens to people like me then?" Alistair's expression softened. He reached out, his heavy, gauntleted hand hovering near her shoulder before he pulled it back. "The Saintess speaks for the gods, but a knight speaks for his sword. As long as I am standing, no miracle will harm you." "Then let me pray," Maya whispered. "Just for a moment, to feel safe." Alistair sighed, a sound of defeat. He pushed the heavy oak doors open. 5 minutes. I will stand by the altar." As Alistair turned his back to keep watch, Maya moved with the silent efficiency of a woman who had spent her teens sneaking out of her bedroom window. She didn't pray, she climbed. Using the decorative scrollwork of the pillars, she ascended into the shadows of the rafters. There, she found it, a massive, multifaceted crystal rigged to a pulley system. She pulled a small vial from her pocket, a mixture of grease and charcoal Elena had prepared. She didn't break the crystal, she coated one side of it and tilted the frame just 3 degrees to the left. Below, Alistair looked up. "Mina?" Maya froze, hugging the pillar. "Just finding a quiet spot," she squeaked. She scrambled down, landing softly on the rug. Alistair was standing right there. He looked at her soot-stained hands, then at her flushed face. He didn't ask questions. Instead, he took her hand and wiped the charcoal away with his thumb. "You are the worst liar I have ever met," he murmured. "Is that why you're still holding my hand?" Maya countered. Alistair didn't let go. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "It is why I am going to forget I saw you in the rafters. Whatever game you and the lady are playing, win it. Because I don't think I can breathe in a world where you're a monster." The trial, the light of revelation. The entire court was gathered in the courtyard as the blood moon reached its zenith. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and fear. Isabella stood on the raised dais, her white robes glowing with a faint, artificial shimmer. "The darkness has taken root in this house," Isabella cried, her voice amplified by mana. "The gods demand a sacrifice of truth. Let the light of the blood moon show us the heart of the betrayer." She signaled to her hidden acolytes. High above, the pulley groaned. A beam of concentrated, crimson light shot down from the chapel tower. Isabella pointed her finger at Elena. "Behold, the villainous Alara." But the light didn't hit Elena. Because of Maya's 3-degree adjustment, the beam struck the silver mirror on Isabella's own ceremonial belt, reflected upward, and hit the holy relic Isabella was holding, the stolen heart of the sun. The charcoal coating on the crystal filtered the light, turning the crimson beam into a sickly, necrotic green. As it hit the relic, the holy gemstone didn't glow. It began to smoke and hiss, revealing the black sludge Isabella had used to fake its divine power. The crowd gasped. The light of truth was literally melting the Saintess's miracle. It's a trick," Isabella screamed, dropping the hissing stone. "Alara, you did this." Elena stepped forward, her violet eyes flashing with triumph. "I am standing right here, Isabella. It was your gods who chose where the light fell. Tell us, why does the Saintess's relic smell like sulfur and deception?" Caspian stepped out from the shadows, his amber eyes glowing with a terrifying frost. He picked up the blackened stone with a gloved hand. "This isn't a relic, it's an unstable mana bomb. You brought this into my home? You risked the lives of everyone here for a miracle." "Caspian, no, I did it for us," Isabella sobbed, reaching for him. Caspian stepped back as if her touch were leprous. "There is no Isabella. There is only the law." He turned to the guards. "Take the Saintess to the high tower. She will stay there until the Inquisition arrives to explain why her holiness smells like a forge." The aftermath. A different kind of heat. As the guards dragged a screaming Isabella away, the courtyard cleared. The blood moon began to fade, replaced by the first gray light of dawn. Elena leaned against a stone pillar, her strength finally wavering. She felt a heavy, fur-lined cloak settle over her shoulders. Caspian was there, his presence a solid, grounding weight. "You knew," he said. "It wasn't a question. I had a feeling," Elena replied softly. Caspian turned her to face him. His hands were cold, but his gaze was scorching. "You are dangerous, Alara von Radcliffe. You've humiliated the church, broken a saintess, and rewritten the laws of my heart in less than a month. Are you going to arrest me for it?" Elena teased, though her heart was racing. "No," Caspian whispered, his face inches from hers. "I'm going to make you the Duchess of the North. Because I suspect that with you by my side, I'll never be bored for a single day of my life." He kissed her then, a kiss that tasted of winter and victory. Across the courtyard, Maya was leaning against Alistair's armored chest, watching the sunrise. "So," Alistair said, his arm wrapped firmly around her waist. "Are you going to tell me how you learned to rig a chapel's optics?" "Maybe in the next chapter," Maya laughed, closing her eyes. They had survived the climax. The plot was dead. Now, they just had to figure out how to live. Chapter 5. The Industrial Revolution of Hearts. The fallout of the Blood Moon was not a quiet affair. In the original text of the Crimson Vow, this was the chapter where the kingdom would have mourned the fallen Lady Alara. Instead, the morning sun rose on a capital in a state of absolute existential whiplash. The saintess was in a cage, the duke was in love with a villainess, and the lowly maid was currently teaching the captain of the guard how to make a proper grilled cheese sandwich using a shield and a campfire. But for Elena and Maya, the victory felt fragile. They weren't just characters anymore, they were the architects of a collapsing narrative. And as any writer knows, when the plot breaks, the world tends to get glitchy. The war room. From corsets to blueprints. 2 weeks after Isabella's arrest, the Radcliffe estate had been transformed. The ballroom, once used for vapid dances and hushed scandals, was now filled with drafting tables and prototypes. Elena sat at the head of a long oak table, her violet eyes scanning a map of the Northern Territories. Beside her, Caspian sat with his chin in his hand, watching her with an expression that sat somewhere between adoration and utter confusion. "You want to build a rail?" Caspian asked, testing the word on his tongue. "A steam-powered locomotive," Caspian, Elena corrected, tapping a quill against the parchment. "The North has the iron and the coal, but it takes 3 weeks to move supplies to the capital. If we can cut that down to 3 days, the king won't care if the saintess is a fraud or a folk hero. He'll care about the gold." "It's madness," Duke Marcus muttered from the corner, though he was busy counting the silver coins Elena had already generated through her Radcliffe logistics reform. "Machines that move without horses? You'll scare the gods." "The gods seem a bit preoccupied lately, father," Elena said dryly. She looked at Caspian. "Can your mages stabilize the pressure valves with ice mana? If we can't control the heat, the engine becomes a bomb." Caspian leaned in, his shoulder brushing hers. The cold he usually radiated had mellowed into a pleasant, bracing coolness. "My mages are warriors, Alara. They are used to freezing hearts, not regulating boilers." "Then teach them to be engineers," Elena said, her gaze intense. "The world is changing. We can either be the ones driving the engine, or the ones stuck on the tracks." Caspian chuckled, a low, melodic sound. "I have no idea half the words you use, but I find I would follow you into a volcano if you promised me a better way to harvest sulfur." The forge, sparks and stethoscope. While the engineers of the North were being drafted, Maya was running a revolution of her own in the castle's forge. She had convinced Sir Alistair that the knight's armor was aerodynamically inefficient and a nightmare for lower back health. More importantly, she had set up a makeshift laboratory in the back of the smithy. "Hold this," Maya commanded, handing Alistair a glass tube. The captain of the guard, a man who could kill a bear with his bare hands, held the delicate glass as if it were a live grenade. "Mina, the men are talking. They say you're a witch. They say you're making invisible soldiers in these jars. They're called microbes, Alistair. And they aren't soldiers, they're the reason your leg didn't fall off last month," Maya said, peering through a primitive microscope she'd fashioned from polished monocrystals. She stood up, wiping soot from her forehead. She was wearing a pair of modified trousers and an oversized shirt, a scandal that had sent the head housekeeper into a literal fainting spell. Alistair looked at her, his gaze lingering on the way her hair escaped her braid. "You don't belong in a kitchen. You don't even belong in a castle." Maya stopped, her heart fluttering. "Is that your way of telling me I'm fired?" Alistair stepped closer, the heat of the forge casting dancing shadows across his rugged face. He reached out, his hand clasping hers, glass tube and all. It's my way of saying that the North is a harsh place. We value what works. And you work better than anything I've ever seen. He pulled a small, silver chain from his vest. On it hung a heavy, iron ring, the mark of a free knight. In this kingdom, a maid cannot marry a knight. But a lady can. And a scholar can. Maya blinked. Alistair, are you trying to career track me into a marriage proposal? I am telling you that I have spoken to the Duke, Alistair said, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. He is granting you the title of Royal Alchemist of the North. Your maid days are over, Mina. Unless you'd rather stay a servant? Maya laughed, a bright, clear sound that cut through the hiss of the bellows. She threw her arms around his neck, pulling the stone-faced knight down. Captain, for a man who hates new ideas, that was a very progressive move. The glitch in the matrix, the shadow returns. The piece was shattered on the eve of the first engine test. Elena was in the library, finalizing the pressure charts, when the candles suddenly flickered and died. The air didn't turn cold with Caspian's ice, it turned heavy and damp, smelling of ancient, stagnant water. Did you really think the story would let you go so easily? Elena spun around. Standing by the window was Isabella. But she wasn't the saintess anymore. Her white robes were tattered, and her eyes, once blue, were now a hollow, swirling black. She looked less like a woman and more like a tear in reality. The system is correcting, Elena, Isabella hissed, her voice echoing as if from the bottom of a well. I was the protagonist. You were the villain. By saving yourself, you've unraveled the world. The gods, the readers, the authors, whatever they are, they're bored. And when they get bored, they hit delete. There is no system here, Isabella, Elena said, her hand reaching for a heavy bronze letter opener. There's just people making choices. You chose to be a parasite. I chose to be a person. The choices are ending, Isabella laughed, and as she did, the walls of the library began to blur, the ink on the pages of the books running like water. If I don't get my happy ending, then no one gets an ending at all. Isabella lunged, but she didn't strike with a blade. She struck with a wave of pure, chaotic static. Elena braced for impact, but the blow never landed. A wall of jagged, crystalline ice slammed down between them. Caspian stepped from the shadows, his amber eyes burning with a light that outshone the moon. Behind him, Alistair burst through the door, Maya right at his heels holding a vial of what looked like highly concentrated acid. Get away from her, Caspian growled, his voice vibrating with a power that made the stone floor crack. You can't freeze a ghost, Duke. Isabella shrieked. Maybe not, Maya shouted, stepping forward and uncorking the vial. But I can neutralize the mana signature of a transmigrated soul using a base-level solvent and a little bit of Seattle spite. Maya hurled the vial. It didn't hit Isabella's body, it hit the air around her. The liquid sizzled, reacting with the protagonist aura Isabella was using to tether herself to the world. The black smoke around Isabella began to dissipate. She let out one final, piercing scream as the plot finally lost its grip on her. With a flash of white light, the same light that had hit them in the car in Seattle, she was gone. The final chapter, The Unwritten Life. The library was silent. The books were still blurry, but slowly, the ink began to settle into new words. New stories. Caspian turned to Elena, his breathing heavy. He checked her for injuries, his hands trembling. What was that? What did she mean, delete? Elena looked at Maya, then at the two men who had defied their own destinies to stand by them. She meant that the world used to have a script, Elena said softly. She took Caspian's hand, feeling the solid, warm reality of him. But I think we just broke the pen. Does that mean we don't know what happens next? Alistair asked, his arm firmly around Maya's shoulders. Maya grinned, leaning her head against him. It means for the first time in our lives, we're actually live. No spoilers. A year later, the first steam engine of the North pulled out of the station. It was painted charcoal gray and silver. Its name was the Seattle Star. On the platform, two couples stood watching the smoke trail into the clear blue sky. The Duchess of the North was arguing with the Grand Duke about the merits of public education. The Royal Alchemist was showing the captain of the guard how to use a thermometer. They had been transmigrated to die. They had been written to be rivals. But in the end, they found that the greatest obstacle wasn't a villainess or a saintess, it was the fear of writing their own ending. And as the train's whistle echoed through the mountains, Elena and Maya shared a look. They didn't need a sequel. They were finally home. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more such stories. The end.